Alright, do you like those weird other Hunter books called like Divergence or whatever? They were like with that Bob Dylan kid instead of
Get ready.
the Sarah Jessica Lohan. What the fuck? Hi, Smalls Noodle.
Hi.
I think I'm thinking of Maze Runner. I'm like, wait, Dylan. I think Dylan O'Brien was in Maze Runner.
He was in.
Ah shit! I got a little too overzealous.
You did get a little spooky.
Dude, the mental momentum in this game fucks with me, because I'll be like, oh yeah, of course, just keep on jumping, right? And then like I'm at a part where I know I should not keep on jumping and try to catch myself, and then I just like don't. I like just get a little too cray. Like right here, it's like slow your roll right here, but instead of what the oh, the lag tried to kill me, but I'm alive. Oh god. Okay. Whoa!
You're alive, you're alive, you're alive.
Technology be saying no. But my body!
It's saying eat the ass of Jubilee.
Eat the ass of the sacrifice. Yeah.
Eat the ass of my they them more like.
Oh man, I wish I could get that checkpoint, because I do like streamlined checkpoints. I think they're very nice.
Yeah, it's also very nice.
I've always said this, I think levels should be as hard as they want to be, that's fine. But you should have, like, streamlined checkpoints, so that way it's like, oh, we feel like we're still making progress as the player. Like,
No,
don't change the level design, just make, like, checkpoints. Ah! Anyway, what?
So, I've never read the Divergent books. I was not interested in the Divergent books.
Is that not the one with that girl in the...
It is the girl...
Or is that the Hunger Games? It's the Hunger Games, right?
No, well, it depends on what you're talking about.
Where they do the whistle and they're like, ooh, with the fingers? And everyone was all like, oh my god, that's the Nazi salute, but in this fictional universe.
Oh, that's Hunger Games. I thought you were talking about Divergent.
That's the Hungry Games. Hungry Hippos.
Oh, boy. No, you're talking about Hunger Games.
I am, yeah, I don't know. It's been a while. Like, Hunger Games was a thing back in, like, 2015. You know, like... And then there was Divergent, which was, like, this other Hunger Games that was, like, different. Where's your voice? Come back to me.
I'm here. Are you talking about Divergent now? Are you actually talking about Divergent?
Yeah, what's that other Hunger Games one? You know, the one that's like the other Hunger Games?
You mean Divergent?
I'm being the most infuriating person right now.
Are you talking about Divergent? Because I'm not gonna say anything if you're not talking about it.
Oh my god. You know, like the other series that came out in 2015, 2014 that was neither Hunger Games nor Maze Runner with Dylan O'Brien.
You mean Divergent?
Yeah, that one. Didn't it have like a weather vane of a cock and ball on it, the front cover? Right? It had like a weather vane with like a rooster. You know what I mean?
I swear to Christ. I don't think so.
That might have been the Hungry Games as well, actually. Out of bounds!
You know what's actually interesting?
What?
I never read the Hunger Games either. I didn't read the Hunger Games, and I did not read the Divergent series. I also didn't read the Maze Runner.
I got the checkpoint! Fuck you! I got the checkpoint! Anyway.
With Dylan O'Brien, I never read the Maze Runner.
Yeah.
I just wasn't interested in them. Like, I tried to read the first Hunger Games, and it just was bad. Like, all around. I don't... And I know, like, fans of Divergent and Hunger Games gonna, you know, crucify me for whatever, you know? But, like, it didn't have the appeal because I don't know, I'd already kind of read something like it.
Oh, in a dystopia, what?
Like, it's like teen girl survives a dystopia. And that was like the genre of the times, you know? Like that was every book coming out was like, oh, this teen girl is surviving a dystopia and she's the chosen one.
Yeah,
you know, she's the one that's gonna like save the rest. And it's usually like a white girl, and it's usually, you know, woo! A whole set of other weird stuff with that. But like, I don't know, it was like there was a time where it was just nothing but that, and there was like nothing interesting, and it was all like the same formula and all of the same shit. And I guess I was reading like Percy Jackson, and I was reading, you know, the Hunters, Warrior, you know, the Warrior books with the cats. I was reading comic books a little bit, and I was just like, this is boring shit.
Yeah.
I've already tasted it. It became too. I watched the movies because my friends liked The Hunger Games, and then they liked Divergent. I didn't really see Maze Runner because even though I have friends who liked it, I just didn't see it, like, because I saw stuff about it on Tumblr and Instagram, and at that point I was like, fine, I've kind of already seen the movie.
Fuck this ass! Anyway.
But, you know, I don't know, it was a weird time because, you know, it was just, everywhere you looked, it was like, teen girl survives dystopia, and now she's in a love triangle. Oh, because also, like, what also came out was Stephanie Meyer came out with a book called The Host, and it was another like teen girl dystopian like type of story, and it was just like, what is going on with the teen girl like romance like dystopian craze? It wasn't.
Yeah, I don't know. Wow, you know, it's so funny because I've never felt strongly about those stories. I didn't think that even when they were coming up that they were necessarily like, because I know it's very easy to say like when something gets trendy, it's easy to say like, oh, it's overrated and shit. And I would agree that like, of course, when things get trendy, a lot of people tend to like just kind of love it for the aesthetic and discard a lot of proper story elements and valid criticisms. But like, I never felt strongly about like a lot of those teen dystopic novels that were coming out, either to love them or to really hate them.
Well, I don't hate them.
My favorite thing. Okay, what?
Well,
say your piece, you slut.
I was saying I don't hate them. It just was tiring because there wasn't like a lot of variety.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm still into like oh! I was at around that time, I think 2015, 2016, I tried to get into this book series called The School for Good and Evil by Soman Chainani, and I didn't really, so here's the thing, I liked the first and second books. Apparently they're getting a movie too, and
it's a TV series.
It's a TV series? Oh, you know, that's better than movies. Fuck movies. And, like, it's just, like, so interesting because the first and second books were cool, and the third book I really could not care for, and every time I'm, like, writing a story, I'm like, oh god, I hope it doesn't turn out like the third book of A School for Good and Evil. So, like, the thing is, in the third book, it does this thing that a lot of stories do, where they alternate between different characters and their journeys and their scenes, right? And that's how I write stories, as you know. And what happens is that the third book has this really awesome, like, it has like a lot of thrilling, like, conflicts between some of the more main characters. And then for the longest time, it just keeps telling us about like this. It follows this other set of characters for a little bit that I do not care about. And I'm like, hey, that's great. Can we like go back to see what these other guys are doing? You know, because it's kind of doing that thing that like I do, or like George R. R. Martin does, where it's like we're gonna tell like a bunch of different characters and their journeys, and kind of do this like multi-narrative like fantasy story. And I was like, oh, you know, that's cool. Like that's always fun to write as a writer, and I think it must be entertaining for readers and watchers. So I'm gonna play a new level because that last level was weird, and I think I've already played that too. So. It's reading the School for Good and Evil book 3, and there was a thing where they wanted us to follow like a bunch of characters, and there was this really compelling narrative with this one set of characters. And then they went to go on and talk about these other sets of characters for like the longest time, and I was like, okay, can we revisit these other characters at all? Like in any capacity? Can we do that? And he just never would, and I'm like, well then, this is like weirdly boring, because now like, you're not even like teasing me about what these other characters are up to. So that was my complaint, and I dropped the book because it just got so boring.
So, but you just said you liked when they switch characters, so how could you not get invested in these new characters when he's switching the different things? Like, you write just like him.
Because it wasn't even going back in even like any small capacity to what the more interesting narrative was, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, here's this really interesting thing, and now for the next like 200 pages we're gonna talk about other stuff, and it's like, what? Yeah,
but did you even give the story a chance?
Yeah, I went through like a good half, 3/4 of the third book, and I was just like, this doesn't seem like it's gonna get fun for a while.
Yeah, but if you're already jonesing to go back to another set of characters, it doesn't sound like you like paused on that. It just sounds like you got weird about it.
Ah, that's fine. I'm not allowed to have my own opinions then. That's okay.
No, I'm just saying that, like, when you read a book, you're already in your complaint going, and he didn't even go to these characters I care about. When it's like...
Again, my complaint was that he didn't go over to the characters I cared about, like, at all. Like, it would have been fun if even for maybe like 5 pages, he was like, oh, these guys! And then it ended on another cliffhanger, and then we went back to a bunch of minor contrivances again. But the story went off in such a completely different direction that I didn't really care to follow. Does that make sense?
I mean, sort of. It just sounds like you didn't like his other characters, or were upset that he didn't just make a story about the ones you actually care about.
Again, it's been a while, and I think that's somewhat valid. I don't really remember liking too much of the characters outside of, like, kind of the main characters. So, I guess so, right?
Because, like, you do a lot of what he does. And you often switch too much. And so, like, if he has a bunch of characters, I would say, and he's trying to juggle them all, of course he's gonna want to spend, like, you know, some time on the minor characters to kind of flesh them out. And be like, we'll get back to the main characters. But for now, the story's gonna, you know, focus on, like, Joe, Beth, and Pepper. I don't know their names. I've never read these things, but, like, that's
yeah, it's like Agatha, Sophia, and Tedros are, like, the main 3.
You know what? It probably
I mean, if you're such a big fan of School for Good and Evil, I would happily take you to Books A Million, and we can check it out, because the books are still continuing, because now they're up to, like, book 6 or something. I'm like, wow.
I don't know if I'm a big... It's not that I'm a big fan, it's just that maybe people were excited to see the minor characters actually get a storyline. Instead of being, like, the props just for, like, the main characters. I know that's how I feel in, like, TV shows and movies, where I'm like, I wish that these side characters would get a storyline that's not, like with the Vampire Diaries, I wish that Bonnie got her own storyline, rather than it being tied to Elena all the damn time. Like, it was so annoying.
Is she even in the sequel that's like Legacies?
Not really, because they treated the actor so badly she didn't want to come back.
What the fuck?
But like, but the thing is like, it always focused on Elena. That even like the minor characters outside, you know, the thing, it was like I would like her own storyline. Like I could give a shit about Elena. I could give a shit about Stefan, Damon, whatever. I want Bonnie to have her own storyline. So I imagine people who are reading a book of Good and Evil, when it was the minor character's turn, but some of them were like, fuck yeah, like, they're getting fleshed out. Like, they're getting... well, you were saying that you just didn't like the other characters and you wanted them to go back.
Yeah, so, again, obviously you disagree with me, that's fine, but let me just kind of reinstate my point, so I can just, if I do get hated, I get hated for what I mean to say, and not what I don't mean to say. I don't really remember liking a lot of the other side characters in that story, that's true. This was back in 2015, 2016, so it's been a number of years. My point was that I didn't necessarily hate the bouncing back and forth between like multi-narratives and the fantasy story. But what it was I wanted them to revisit what was going on in the more compelling narrative, if for just briefly, and then once again go, okay, here's the side characters again, let's flesh these guys out more. Instead it was, here's this compelling narrative, and then it was kind of like, it was like pinheld for like a good like 200 pages, and I was like, whoa, what the fuck, are we ever going to go back to that, right? If they had just gone back to it briefly, if there was like just like 5-7 pages or something, and then it was like, okay, back to these side characters, you know, and if it was like, go back to the main narrative or the compelling narrative, and then end that on a cliffhanger once again, and then retreat back to the side characters, I'd be like, oh, okay, you know, like I feel like I'm being teased, and then I'm being compelled to be interested in the side characters. That's fine. It seemed like it went off in a different direction after introducing a compelling narrative with other characters, and I was like, oh, I don't think this story is going to get interesting again for a long time. I'm gonna drop this. That was my point. That's all.
I think that wasn't his purpose, because if you're just reading the side characters, then you're not actually growing to care about them.
Oh, I played this before, but this is interesting.
You just want to get back to like the main characters. So it doesn't really. If he had done what you would ask, you know, then he might as well not write any of the side characters' screen time at all.
Yeah. So then you disagree with me. It's okay. Yeah.
No, I disagree with you because I don't understand. You want him to essentially drop off the side characters.
No.
No.
I don't want him to discard the side characters. That's not what I'm saying. I don't want him to discard the side characters. I want him to just tease the compelling main narrative a bit more.
He's already done that. He's already done that in the beginning. And then he wants to focus on the side characters and then go back.
So I guess like a comparison, yeah, right. So a comparison to what I mean would be like, imagine if like Game of Thrones, right? How like Game of Thrones, the way that show was set up was kind of implied to make like Jon Snow this kind of main character, where then you would follow him and you would kind of tease him and what he's up to in the Night's Watch, and then the rest of the show would kind of be like, oh, here's Cersei and here's the Lannisters and here's what the Baratheons and Melisandre and all these people are doing, right? And imagine like if they like just had Jon Snow in the first episode, and then never ever got back to him again for all of season 1 until like maybe like the last episode. You know what I mean? Oh, I missed 2 gems. Shit.
I mean, they kind of did that though with a lot of characters. They did that with Arya a lot. They did that with Daenerys. You know, they would focus on the War of the Kings rather than the whole story altogether. So I kind of already know that, and I already kind of wanted the side characters to get more screen time because a lot of the main characters I could not give a shit about. I was like, what is the... Like, you want me to get to know all of these characters, and yet the most interesting characters is Daenerys. And you can't even put your full, like, weight into it. Like, she's more compelling than any of your main characters, really. Like, I don't care about Ned, I don't care about Cersei and Rob and Jon and the Starks. Like,
I do think Daenerys is a compelling character, though. Like, I agree with you there.
She was treated as, like, a side character. She was treated like it would be forever, and then we would get to her. And I was like, fucking finally, like, I don't care about the king. I don't care about Sansa. I don't care about these main characters that you want me to.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess that's why I'm kind of like... I'm just saying, like, I understand why he would do that, because... Like, it's pointless to keep going back to the main narrative, like, back and forth. Because then instead of letting the reader get to know the side characters, and letting the reader, like, really get invested, he keeps going back to, like, the main people. And then it's like, now you're just reading it for the main people, and you're not reading it for the side people. Like, you're not allowing yourself to get invested, because you're just like, oh, well, when's the next teaser for the main characters happening? Like, you got your first half of the book. You got your first main, like, now it's time for other characters to shine. And if you don't like that, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, that's okay. You just don't like other characters being focused on. And that's okay, you like these other main ones because you view that's better and that's where his energy should have been. And that's okay as a reader.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't remember liking the side characters a whole lot, so I think there's validity in what you're saying there. I just wish you would have teased the main characters a bit more. Like, for every, like, 100 pages he does, like, the side characters, he should have done, like, maybe, like, 5 to 10 of the main characters.
The thing, though,
I think another thing, too, that comes to mind is that I thought, when I was reading the third book of School for Good and Evil, you know, following Tedros and Agatha and Sophie, I think I might have also been reading it from the perspective of thinking that it was, like, a trilogy, and that the third book was supposed to, like, culminate towards something, like, wild. And when it divvied off into all this, like, side-tracking stuff, it kind of felt like what people say about Star Wars Episode 6 with the Ewoks, whenever there's, like, criticism about those guys. Because I've heard criticism about the Ewoks before from Return of the Jedi. I liked them, but I know people thought that was like a sidetracking thing in Episode 6. But I felt like in reading Book 3, I was like, oh, is this like a trilogy? Because I was reading the books as they were coming out, and I didn't know that I think there was going to be more. Because they're up to like 5 or 6 or something. And I think when I was reading Book 3, I was like, oh, is this trying to be, is this going to wrap up? Is this kind of culminating to something interesting? And instead, it went off, and I was like, oh, wait, what's happening? I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes more sense than just being mad that your favorite characters weren't being focused on. Like,
yeah,
that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Because I kind of get like that when you write about, like, Kazanti and his lover.
Yeah.
Where, like, I could not care about them. I don't even want to write them.
That's fascinating. Yeah. It's funny because in my story, Kazanti and Kaneko are supposed to be, they're kind of supposed to be more of like the teasing characters. Like, they're supposed to be more symbolic of other characters in the story. So, like, there's this, I forget what the actual terminology is, but a lot of times in fiction and in prose and fantasy, there's usually, like, subplots that are supposed to be whole foreshadow arcs for, like, later plots in the story. Like, oh god, like, there's, like, a lot of times, this will happen a lot in anime, where, like, there'll be, like, an arc that is, like, kind of this, like, fillery sort of arc, but it'll be indicative of a bigger arc that's coming up. So, it's kind of like a Corrigus foreshadowing, I guess. But, well, I took my stupid pills today. Boy, howdy did I take my stupid pills today. This is crazy. I feel like a level
Yeah, no,
designer,
like-
but in a weird way. Bumpy
Yeah.
highway. Ooh, I'm gonna get some bumps and some bumps.
Get
Oh my
ready.
gosh, some razor bump. But yeah, no, that makes sense. Because, like, there are times where, like, I watch something, I'm like, oh, I don't really care about these, like, side characters, or I don't really care about the main character. I think it's just, if you go into it thinking it's going to be one thing, and then it disappoints you,
Yeah.
or you don't allow yourself, and I'm just saying in general, like, if you, because, like, side characters themselves can often be more compelling than the main focus. Like, with Avengers, Black Widow was supposed to be a main character, but she was really a side character. And she was more compelling than, you know, fucking Steve or Iron Man. You know, like, Thor was more, he was more interesting than, like, a lot of stuff. Loki, that's why Loki got so much, like, attraction, you know? Like, he was a side character, yet he was so much more compelling than who we were supposed to be, you know, rooting for. And who we were supposed to be kind of like, oh, you should be really, like, focusing on these guys. Don't worry about, like, you know, Iron Man and whoever. And then the same thing, you know, happened, I would say, in, like, you know, like, the sequel, like, and stuff like that. And it becomes a lot more, like, I think ultimately it's how you write your character sometimes that, like, can make or break it.